Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. And in today's lesson, what we're going to be doing, we're going to be doing our loading screen. And once we do our loading screen, we're going to also add our splash screen. Then we're going to build everything and move over to the 360 and see how it actually looks. So we'll launch the game, and the game will launch like a normal game, showing the splash screen and everything. Go straight to the main menu, and we'll also load our new game, which will be the level that we've been working on, and then we'll see how it looks. And we'll make small adjustments along the way. So let's get started. So here we have where we left off on the last time, and we were able to create our main menu and also navigate through a main menu. So yeah. All right, so we need to just make sure that everything is where it should be. Okay. Okay, so everything is working the way it should. I just actually started on the setting page. But yeah, so we're gonna have our loading screen, which will allow us to load into our game. So you won't see a blank screen and wondering if the game is loading or not. Alright, stop this and let's get into it. So the first thing we want to do, we're gonna go back into our main menu script and we're gonna make a few adjustments and add a few options to add our loading screen and everything. All right, so let's open up. All right, so here we already have our button that loads the new game. So we're just gonna make a slight adjustment because in loading our scene, we want the loading screen to load while our scene is loading, not before. So we're gonna basically apply asynchronous operation to our script. So the loading script run alongside while the scene is loading and relay the progress of the loading status. So I'm just gonna adjust this a bit. So we're gonna basically put this in a core routine. So what we can do is have our loading scene right here. So we can remove this. We can score. Here we have start core routine. Behavior will be load game scene. So we're going to create a function that's called um, load game screen. That will pass out the value to it, and then you'll basically see what we're talking about when you reach there. So let's call this load game scene. Scene manager, get active. Okay, build ++1. That sounds fine. So let's go down here and create that function. So I'll do that. And being that we'll be passing in the index of the scene, so and it's an integer. All right, so passing the game scene index. All right, so load game scene. So this have an error because enumerator is actually return something, so it's not a void function. So for now, let it return null. That should clear up that. So in this function is where we're gonna actually do our asynchronous operation. Just a bracket right there. All right. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna have a variable that grabs the load status from our asynchronous loading screen. So once the screen is loading, it's going to pass the status to a variable, and that's what we're going to use for our progress bar. So asynchronous operation, and let's call this current load stat, and go to scene manager dot load asynchronous, and it will load the index of the scene. So when you press the new game button, whatever scene that comes next, that's what's going to get passed to this function. So it'll be scene index. All right. So before we move on, we need to create a few variables to pass, such as the loading screen variable. I would say value to, so that we can apply it to our game object. So top here, we're going to first have the Unity engine .ui. Could be that we're going to be adding the progress bar, which is part of the UI menu, and you'll see what I'm referring to. All right, so next serialize field, and one to our a slider, because that's what we use for the loading bar, and let's call it loading bar. And we need a text to show that it's actually loading. So on a serialize field, and we're gonna have a text field, and let's call this loading text. And we need our loading screen itself. So for the loading screen itself, we're gonna add a serialize field, and then private. And the loading screen is going to be a game object, which is going to be a panel. So we need something to put a slot for a game object to put it in. Call that loading screen. And we need a value to pass our floating value to. So for that, we're gonna use a float. And I'm gonna show that as 0. Um, because the way Unity handles loading screen, it doesn't go like from 1 to 100. It goes from actually 0 to 1. So it counts up like 0.1 will be 10%. So we're going to have to actually apply a calculation further down. So that we have all of those. So we need to grab our value from the scene when it's loading. So we're going to lose our, before we do that, we're going to make sure our loading screen is not active. We don't want it to be active while this is happening. So we're going to make sure that our loading screen is disabled. So we'll turn it on here. So we're going to disable it in the inspector. We want it to start as a disabled game object, and once the scenes start to load, it will be enabled in this function. And once the scene finish load, we will basically disable it. Now we want to do some stuff in the middle while the screen is loading. So we're gonna do get the value and everything. So we're gonna do basically, so while the current loading stat from the operation, because this is grabbing the status. So while it is not, while it's not done, we're gonna do some function here. So while the scene is in the loading progress, so we're gonna grab the login progress after scene. And being that we're working with float, so I want to make sure that we keep everything the way it should be. So matf float, and it will be the current loading stat, and get the progress, and let's, it's a float, so we divide it by that's 0. One. All right. So that's int that. All right. So for that, just want to make sure. Argument. So let's see what I'm not doing correct here. So we grab the value, we store it in the current stat, and while the stat is not done, I'm going to be grabbing the current stat, it's the progress, stat. Okay, so I'm working with integers, so we have to keep things the way we started off. Float. Okay. So that makes sense. All right. So in our next line, so we'll have the loading bar. Value. So we want to assign the loading progress to the loading bar. So whatever progress the scene is at, to get assigned to the loading bar. And we want our loading text to also say something. So let's do loading text, text, and we'll have it saying loading. And we're going to want to show the percentage of loading. So sticking with the float, and we're going to round it off to an integer so that we don't have like 10.1%. We just have a whole number. So loading progress times 100 plus, we want to see a percentage behind the value. Let's have it like that. So you'll see loading, the loading progress, and the percentage. And let's move the return null to right here. So this is going to be in a while loop, so we want to make sure that it's return a null value. And let's clean that up. So once this loop has concluded, it will disable the panel itself, so you'll no longer see a loading screen. What you'll actually be seeing is our scene that loads up. So we're gonna save this and we're gonna move over to Unity. So now we're gonna create our loading screen, and to do that, so we have our main menu here. So we are going to create a panel. So right click, go to UI, and then we go to panel. And we can see that our panel is behind our main menu right here. So let's click on main menu. We want to bring this up. So let's put our panel. We can put it here. Okay, so we need to see our panel to know where it is. Alright, so we're now seeing our panel. Okay, let's see what's happening here. Okay, so we need something for our panel to go on. So our extract is, let's create a new canvas. And let's rename this on screen. Let's see if this actually works. This, and let's create a panel. Okay, here we go. And let's name this panel background. So we'll call this loading background. Okay, so now that we have that, we are going to turn this off. And this panel here, we're going to go to UI. We're going to add our slider. All right, so let's bring our slider down. And we're going to resize our slider. All right, so we don't need that little bump right there. So let's get rid of the handled area. We don't need that. And fill area. So let's be consistent with like that color for the slider. So whenever time the game is loading, it will look just like that, which is perfect. All right, so that's on that end. So by default, this is gonna be disabled. So on our main menu where we have the script, we see where it needs the loading bar, the text, and the game object. So what we're going to do, we need to add our text. So let's re-enable that. So let's do that, UI, text, and let's call this our loading text. So now that we're loading text, we can for the color, let it be that color. We can put the size from, let's say, 25, probably 30. I think 25 is probably good. Let's see what font we have. We can use that font and get center down, and let's bring it around there. So that's where our loading message will come. So now that we know where it is, we can remove that because that will get replaced anyway. All right, so we have our loading panel. Okay, so loading panel, our slider, and our text. And that's all we actually need to get things going. So I'll go back to our main menu here. So our slider. So we drop our slider there. We can drop our text there. On our loading screen, I can drop our loading screen there. By default, we'll disable that so it doesn't show up. So let's give this a try here and see if it actually works. Okay. All right. Let's save that. Save our project. So one more thing that we want to do before we actually go over to the Xbox. So our main menu, there is a splash screen that we're going to apply. So you go into our build settings and you click player, and you'll have this section over here, player settings. So if we go down to splash image, we can drag our splash image that was in the same main menu folder. We can drop it over there. Here we can do other settings, but we won't mess around with this just quite yet because you can add the actual game ID and so forth, and we'll do that later on down. So that we have all of that set up, we're gonna build. Make sure that your main menu is your index 0 and the other levels index 1, because that's the order it's gonna actually load in. And based on the script, we want to make sure that when the script loads, it loads a main menu, and then when it goes to new game, it actually loads your first level. So let's get that built, and then once it's finished, we'll basically head over to our console. All right, so now we're on our console. Just waiting for it to start up, and then once that happens, we're going to transfer our game and to see how it performs. All right, so let's go and transfer the game over. I think we can remove those two so we don't get confused. And next piece is here. Alright. So one of the things I do discover that in Unity, when I try to run the main menu, it was starting at the start menu. I don't know if that's just Unity itself start doing that since I load the project back up, but let's see how the Xbox handle it. If it does do that, I will look further into as to why that's happening. All right, so let's go in and let's Load our game up and see how it looks. There of a splash screen. Alright, so it loads up in our menu here. Alright, so we do need to make some adjustment as to why it loads up like that. So that's something I'll look into. But we can see that the game is running so far with all the stuff that we did. So click our red key. And our numbers are not showing up. And that could be because of the font that's used. So I would actually have to use a font that initially that's on the Xbox itself. I did experience this when I was doing the blade skins, but we do have our level, and this is running on the Xbox itself. And there's no log or anything like that, which is good. Our level is looking good. And it is a rather large level. So I will be creating more level on my own, and then I'll basically show as we progress. You can follow along and use the same website to generate different dungeons and create your own level if you want to follow along, or you can just sit back and enjoy the ride as I go along and create different levels until we have a complete game. So at the moment, I haven't put in a way to quit or anything like that, so we have to do what we normally do. Then we go back out to our Xbox. Yeah. So as the reason why it starts on our settings screen, I'm not quite sure, but that's something I'm going to explore. And in the next video, I will cover a fix for that. If I go back in, close the splash screen, and it goes here. Yeah, so it starts on this screen, and okay. If I go back, all right. So we do have our menu, which I'm going to have to make sure that these are anchored properly, because we didn't anchor our buttons. Go to load menu. Okay, so that's working. Go back, settings, back, and if we go to load game, it loads up. And I do need to anchor the progress bar also. All right, so we'll go to those fixes, and in the next video we'll go to all those. So all right, thanks for watching, and join us again as we continue to complete this game for Xbox 360. Do like and subscribe, and if you have Any questions at all? Any critiques or anything? Just leave it down below, and I'll do my best to answer all your questions to the best of my knowledge. And if there's anything you really would want to see in this series, do leave it down below, and I'll try my best to cover it. All right. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.